So, you know how when you have a retail shop and at that retail shop you make soaps and bath bombs and lotions and scrubs, and you teach other people how to make soaps and bath bombs and lotions and scrubs, and it's awesome, and they have pottery painting and it's amazing. And then the plague hits, and your children get sent home from school forever, probably. And you want to encourage social distancing, so you shut down your shop. But you shut down your shop like a full week before the state required everyone else to do it. So by that time, you have been talking to yourself because you have no more human interaction and you feel like you're losing your mind. So instead of not talking to yourself, you decide to continue talking to yourself, but then film it and call it YouTube content. Hi, I'm Mrs. Open Clay, and welcome to my channel. So this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while, a YouTube channel. I've had an idea for the YouTube channel for, I don't know, several months, and I've wanted to do this 365 days of soap. But I have not had time to actually put it together. I mean, I have the retail shop, I teach the classes, I have two kids in elementary school, I'm always volunteering at the school, I'm volunteering in the community, I'm part of two boards. There's a lot going on. I can't find enough time to actually figure out how to make a YouTube channel. And there's actually a lot involved in all of this, right? I mean, the biggest hurdle for me was learning how to film while I am making soap. But since, COVID happened and we have extra time, I thought this would be a really good time to sort of launch that video piece of, of the soap and clay thing to, I don't know, maybe get some of my self-care back. Now, what I mean by that is I understand that I make, self-care products, right? So like the stereotypical thing that you think of when you think self-care is, in the bathtub with your bath bomb and your book and really relaxing with your mud mask. And I make all those products. That's great. But my personal self-care is human interaction. And I don't have that anymore since we've shut down the shop, and I'm really missing the people and the conversations that we get to have, when you come in or when you're in workshops. And I thought this might be a nice way to continue to connect, even though we can't, connect face to face. So, you know welcome to 365 days of soap. We are at day one. I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. So we're kicking off day one the way that we should, with booze. I feel like I need a glass of wine right now. It's really a lot of fun to incorporate wine or beer into your soap recipes when you can. There are a lot of factors involved in that. We're looking at temperature, we're looking at the types of oils that you would put in, we're looking at how you incorporate your lye into your water mixture. There's a lot kind of involved in making a beer or wine soap, and we're going to talk about it all today. So are you ready for the very first Soap and Clay 365 days of soap video? I am. Let's go. Oh, so now we have prep work. That is where we start all soap making. I'm not actually showing you the prep work in this particular video though. That will come in other videos, I promise. But in all honesty, prep work is every soap maker's least favorite activity. I say in the classes at the shop that soap making is 70% prep work, 20% cleanup, and only 10% actually making the soap, and that could not be more true. You have so much involved in the beginning stages of making soap, right? You are preparing your lye water, you are preparing your oils, you're figuring out your colors, you're determining what you want it to look like, what you want it to smell like, what kind of bar is it going to be? Is it going to be a dish soap? Is it going to be a shower bar? What is the moisture level going to look like? What is the cleansing rate going to be? All of these things are things that you try to figure out in the beginning stages of your prep before making soap. Now, what we are making here today is a wine soap. And wine soaps are great. It's a really nice bar to add to your line because it's antioxidant rich naturally because of the wine. And it also has a lot of extra skin loving benefits and has a really awesome lather to it. Unfortunately, incorporating wine into soap can be a little bit tricky because you're dealing with the extra sugar alcohols. Now, the easiest way to make cold processed soap is typically with distilled water. What you are doing in a wine soap is subbing out the distilled water for wine, and as a result, your batter can trace a little bit fast and get a little bit too thick to do any sort of complicated designs. I have an extra problem with my soaps because they're all clay soaps, so my batter is naturally thick anyway. So what I try to do is work it to just emulsification. We're not talking thin trace, we're not talking medium trace, none of that nonsense. We're getting it just to emulsification in order to keep the batch nice and fluid so we can do a more complicated design in the middle of the bar. And since I really love making my life extra complicated, this particular recipe contains 60% hard oils and 40% liquid oils, meaning that it's not really conducive to the type of design that I'm going for here, which in this case is sort of a modified teardrop to make that rose, the hidden rose in the middle of the bar. Now what I have done to this point is I have made my soap batter. So I have put in my lye solution into my oils and I have mixed it to emulsification. I think I'm just a little bit past emulsification right now actually, and I am close to a thin trace, but you can see through this as it's starting to thicken up. Now what I am doing is I am preparing my colorants. We have 4 colors that will go on the inside of this bar that will hopefully make the rose in the middle of the bar, and then the main base of the bar is going to be white. Honestly, this bar is pretty hit or miss. I never exactly know what is going to happen when I cut into it, which is one of the exciting parts of soap making in all honesty. But because this particular recipe is as thick as it is, because we have the wine in it, and because it is a modified version of a known pour, sometimes it works, sometimes it's beautiful and perfect, and sometimes it's kind of not. Now, I'm the type of soap maker that cares less about the look of it and more about the performance of my soaps. Not that I don't want my soaps to be beautiful, because of course I do. It's fun to make them pretty, but I care more about how they lather, how they feel, how they make your skin feel afterwards, the type of moisture that they have, the type of bubbles that they have, and, you know, all of the other things that we really should be caring about when it comes to what we put on our skin. This recipe, with the selection of the oils and the butters that I used, along with the wine that I used, and the essential oils and everything that went into it, made a really great bar that I really wasn't willing to sacrifice quality for the design inside. And I could have changed the design, sure, but again, I really like making my life hard, so every time I do this, it is a challenge, and I like being challenged. It's not something that I actually really get to experience a whole lot in the soap making world these days, so whenever I get to, I definitely take advantage of it. Now what we have going on here, it's the final mix. Are you guys tired of watching the mixing yet? There is all of the colorants are in there, the kaolin clay is in there, the scent is in there. The blend of this is a really lovely champagne pomegranate scent. It is very bright, it's a slightly fruity, and it's a little bit floral. It has some rose in there as well, which is sort of indicative of what a rosé is. It's crisp, it has a little bit of floral, it's very sweet finish. So that was what I wanted to really convey with the actual scent of the bar. Okay, now that we have all that mixing out of the way, who's ready for the pour? Okay, now for this pour, what we are going for is a white base with sort of a rose down the middle of the bar. Now the way that we are going to achieve this is by laying down some white soap and then creating, with the 2 greens that we have mixed up, the stem. We want it sort of craggy in the middle of the bar, so just sort of show the thorns that would be, on the stem of a rose. And then when we pour those 2 greens on top of each other, we will use 2 containers of white on either side of the 2 lines of green that we pour to sort of zip it back into place and keep it looking like a stem and not a blob. Again, this is sort of a modified teardrop. This is very similar to what you do with a teardrop, except you would continue layering your colors over and over and over again in a teardrop until it was almost to the edges of your mold, and then you would take your main base color and zip it along the sides to sort of seal up the teardrop at the top. We are only doing 1 or 2 passes with the greens because we don't want it to get too far out, otherwise it will stop looking like a stem and look more like a teardrop, really. So this is where I am going to be putting in the white on either side, and as you can see, my batter is already getting thick. Now, this is a combination of multiple things. The biggest reason, of course, is going to be because of the wine in the soap. That is definitely accelerating trace pretty fast, and then we are also looking with the kaolin clay that's in it as well, which tends to make a thicker batch as well. And you see how it glops? It's not great. It's not the best pour ever, but if you sort of force it, you can get the job done. It doesn't always have to be super liquid and perfect, and that's one of the great things about making soap is if you have the ability to sort of change your design or your plan on the fly, you can still end up with a cool bar of soap. Now, if I were going for a proper teardrop with this particular pour, I would have used more liquid oils than solid oils in this recipe and allowed myself more time to play with this. So it would be a more fluid batch of soap. You see how thick it is coming out of the container there into the beakers. This is not super great for a proper teardrop, but for this, I mean, it can be an abstract rose and it's still going to be great. I gotta tell you though, it is far less satisfying to glop soap batter into the mold as opposed to just zip it up and down the sides with a nice fluid pour. This is tedious. This is not the greatest. This is something that definitely makes me irritated, but watch. Oh, that's one of my favorite things ever. It's all craggy and weird looking on top, and then you just bang it a couple times and everything settles down into the mold. Now that is something you should always be doing with your soaps. You should definitely do some banging to make sure we get rid of any air bubbles. And yeah, look at that. Look how thick that batter ended up being. It's very thick. Now, I did not check my temperature before I soaked this. If I had to guess, I would say I was probably soaping at around 100 degrees, which is a lot higher than I normally soap. And I know that sounds weird for soapers that have been, watching all the videos and doing all the things, because 120 is usually the recommended temperature to soap at. However, there are a lot of seasoned soap makers out there that have found that soaping at really low temperatures, room temperature soaping, produces really, really good soap batter that really allows you to do a lot more with your designs and a lot more with your swirls and things like that. And I'm a sucker for swirls, so anything that I can do to get my swirls nice and fluid, I am definitely going to do it. So normally I soap at room temperature, so between 75 and 80 degrees for both my lye solution and my water. Now, you see what I've done here with the 2 colors of red. I got the red and pink going on here. I've sort of layered them on top of each other. I was hoping that they would kind of do a teardrop like the green underneath, but again, it got too thick. So instead of hoping for a perfect little rose bud on this, I am just gonna go for something kind of rose colored. Now, the soap here and the batter here in the beakers, so thick that it's not even worth it to try and actually pour it out of the containers. And so we are going to spatula and we are just going to glop it on. Again, tedious. I do not like working with soap batter that is this thick. And again, I should probably change my design or maybe my recipe for this bar because it happens this way fairly often. But I'm not gonna, because when it works, it's fun and it's like I accomplished something. So at this point, we are basically giving up the ghost. Any semblance of a perfect little rosebud that I had moving forward with a nice little stem moving down, that's not really what's going to happen in this bar, as you can see with how thick this is. And that's okay. The most important thing is it is an amazing bar of soap that lathers really well. It has all these antioxidants in it. It is very, very moisturizing, but has this really, really beautiful bubble to it. And that is the most important thing about soap after all. So we are going to make sure it gets in the mold, all of that awesome soap batter, even though I hate
thick soap batter. I am terrible at line soaps, like terrible, terrible at line soaps, because I refuse to actually make my soaps get this thick, which is why it's so annoying that this particular design got this thick. Because this would be perfect for a layered soap. I would have no problems whatsoever doing that. Now, the last, I don't know, the last ditch effort over here to, you know, maybe get a top to the rosebud is right here. This is what we're doing. We're gonna put some red and some pink down and give it a little swirl within that white and connect it to the lower red and pink underneath. And then we're going to cover it up with the rest of the white. And if you noticed earlier when I was pouring the green and I kind of showed what was left over in those beakers, I kept that back intentionally because I do what's called a messy top on my rosé soaps, and I just sort of throw every little bit of soap batter that I have left in all the beakers on top of it and do just a random swirl on the top, just decorating the top of the bar. I used to put rose petals on it. I have found, honestly, that a lot of consumers don't really like having rose petals or, you know, calendula or whatever on top of their soaps. They find them pretty, but pretty annoying to use, and I can't say that I disagree. So we cut the rose petals from the top of the bar, and you know, honestly, a lot of the bars are like that. They're sort of ever evolving. I really love the input that I get from my sudsers after they've used one of my products, and of course I love the praise, I love the accolades, it's awesome, but I also really appreciate any sort of criticism that they could deliver regarding the design or the function or anything, and I definitely pay attention. And that was one of those things where if they didn't want the rose petals, well, I took the rose petals off. I am definitely not tied to them. Now, the final step in this is going to be taking the whatever's left, all the soap batter that's left. You see again how thick that has gotten, and just sort of blobbing it on the top. How many times have I said blobbing in this video? And after that, after I get everything on top, I am just randomly going to take a stick to all of it and sort of blend it all in together. And it looks like a mess. It's not something that's really necessarily, you know, Insta-worthy or whatever, but individually the bars, when they are cut, each bar looks just stunning. While the top of the entire loaf may look a little bit chaotic, that's okay, because I'm not, you know, presenting the entire loaf to anyone. I'm going to take this and cut it up into, you know, individual bars. And so the individual bars is what's super duper important. Now, you see, going back to the green, and look how thick that has gotten while we've been sitting here not paying attention to it. And this, actually, for a top, it's kind of cool because you can do some cool textured stuff. I am going to try to not do textured stuff, though, and bang it all into the mold as much as I possibly can and keep the top nice and smooth. Why, I really don't know. I could have switched right now and gone to a textured top, and it could have been cool. Could have added some interest to the bar. But I didn't do that. So now I'm just randomly taking my stick sort of all over the place, mixing the colors in together. And yeah, you know, do a little swirl. That's fun. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't really like the look of this green right now because it's not a pretty green. And so I am trying to work out as much of that as possible and work the other colors sort of into it to eliminate some of it. But I really shouldn't be doing this because I know that when it cures, this green changes quite a bit and it will be very lovely. Now, yeah, so yeah, look, oh, more pulls. It's fun. It's a very satisfying thing actually running your chopstick through soap batter. But all good things must come to an end, and now it is time to let this bad boy cure up. Okay, here we are back, day 2. The soap has had about 24 hours to cure. I did put it through gel phase. Now, gel phase is when you take the soap and you essentially heat the internal core to really make those colors pop really well, and it also helps to in your ability to cut it faster. So that's what we are doing now. Is I am first going to trim off the side here and to really kind of expose the inside pattern. Now, full disclosure, I was actually editing this and Mr. Soap and Clay walked in and saw that I had filmed his prototype cutter that he made me many moons ago. and he was mortified. This thing is hashed. It's made out of MDF and plywood. It was literally his prototype. But you know, whenever he makes me something, I say, no, yeah, it's good. I'm gonna keep rolling with it. And I never ask him to make me another one because the list of things that he makes for the soap shop is very big. But after seeing this, he took it upon himself to put this back on his honeydew list, so he will be making me another cutter post haste. But for now, you gotta deal with the ugly thing. We are just those kind of soapers. Now, you see how I have cut the bar. We have actually 11 bars and a little bar that's great for scratch and dent on the end there for this particular batch. And so far the patterns are not super perfect, but oh yeah, you know, that one's actually pretty good. I love that. That is definitely resembling a rose, and the other side is not. Oh well, that's not great. That's what stamp will go. But the bars themselves, they are beautifully formed. They are not lie heavy. We have no pockets of any sort of glycerin rivers or anything going on in there. Oh, see, I switched to another shot to take the cutter out of it because Mr. Soap and Clay really did not like it. That bar, however, I really do like. Look at that one. It's very pretty. And that one's, it's okay. It's fine. But again, for me, the biggest part about the soap making is going to be what the soap actually does. It's going to be the performance. And for me, this soap is one of my favorites as far as the lather and the moisture and all of the awesome things go. And again, it may not be particularly rose-shaped, but I still think it's pretty awesome. And there you have it, day one, the rosé. Again, the pattern didn't turn out exactly how I wanted it, but that's okay. It doesn't make it a bar that I wouldn't sell or that I wouldn't use. I think it's still a lovely bar. And again, the biggest benefit for me is going to be the performance, and this one is just amazing. So I really hope you enjoyed the channel. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, do all the things that you're supposed to do because, you know, new channel, like, bells, whistles, things. You can also find the rosé soap online at soapandclay.com, and you can find me on all social media with Soap and Clay is my handle, with the exception of Facebook, which is I don't even use soap. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow.